Today's webinar is entitled Services Project Mashup, Blending Professional Services and Traditional Project Management for Enhanced Customer Experience. My name is James Bronner. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Journyx, and I have the pleasure of being your host today for the webinar. First, I'd like to extend our heartfelt thanks to you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. We recognize that your time is valuable, and therefore we plan to have you back working productively in just under 30 minutes. A few simple housekeeping items before we get started. Should you have the need to maximize your screen for better viewing, there are controls at the bottom left side of your screen through WebEx. And then finally, you can submit questions online anytime during today's presentation, also via WebEx controls. This time you'll use the Q&A area, and I'll be collecting those as the presentation moves forward, and then we'll be reading those at the end of our time today during the Q&A time. Our agenda is straightforward. First, Brian Peterson, our Director of Application Consulting, will take us through today's webinar, and then we'll begin responding to your submitted questions during the Q&A portion. So without further ado, let me hand over to Brian.
Thanks, James. I want to welcome everyone to our webinar on blending professional services and traditional project management for enhancing customer experience. In our time today, we'll discuss the rising trend of product development and professional services becoming more intertwined in order to manage and deliver a more successful customer experience. We'll talk about some of the related challenges to this, discuss ways to reduce non-billable hours, streamline processes, increase overall efficiency, and also talk about how to measure progress, integrate all project data, and manage a lot of distributed resources. Again, my name is Brian Peterson. I am the Director of Application Consulting here at Journyx, and I've been working with various clients in areas of project execution, resource management, time tracking, project cost accounting, and time and expense reporting for nearly a decade. Let's get right into it. There's a rising trend where product-centric and development organizations and professional services are becoming more and more intertwined in order to manage and deliver a successful customer experience. More and more product-centric organizations are incorporating a professional services offering. And at the same time, more and more services-based organizations are incorporating products and their associated development into their offering. In their excellent book, The Experience Economy, the authors Pine and Gilmore make the point that goods and services are no longer enough. In order to be successful and achieve growth, companies in today's economy must offer their customers a more transformative experience that most often requires the products and services to be one and to be tailored to the specific customer. And this is more than just blurring the line, but actually removing the line between products and services. It's no longer adequate to only deliver our products and services to customers on time, within budget, and as scoped. Today, we've got to be able to provide that positive customer experience, which includes successful project delivery and much more. Customers today are not just looking for solutions, they're looking for results, real, tangible, and measurable results. And results are going to incorporate processes and people in addition to software and technology. Addressing, managing, and integrating all three of these elements is the only way to effect lasting and transformative change. And to accomplish this, product development and professional services organizations are becoming more aligned and assimilated, as we're seeing. More and more product-centric organizations are seeing that a professional services offering helps greatly expand the product base and revenue stream. And by initiating, developing, and managing services-centric organizations within product-based companies, companies are able to provide a better experience to their customers and thereby increase revenue. And as many of these experiences need to be tailored to the specific customer, more and more service organizations are finding the need not only to add products to their offering, but to also the development and the customization of those products as well. And as such, more and more professional services organizations are incorporating traditional project management methodology, as the services and development components are often incorporated into one project. All the while, services organizations are still looking to reduce their non-billable hours, streamline their processes, and increase overall efficiency. And this is in line with the recent increasing trend of mainstreaming of project management that we're seeing. We're seeing project management training being offered in most business schools. Master's degree programs in project management are becoming more and more common. And more parts of the organization are adopting some sort of project management methodology that traditionally had not done so. And we're seeing it move in both ways. We're seeing formal project management methodologies beginning to move down from formal projects and the PMO into more parts of the organization. And at the same time, other parts of the organization that traditionally had not been project-oriented are moving up to incorporate various forms of project management, finding that project management becoming more and more adoptable and approachable. This is also giving rise to what's been called the accidental project manager, those people who are not formally trained in project management, but who possess applicable domain expertise and find themselves still in the role of a project manager simply out of necessity. This all leads to organizations having a very broad spectrum of active projects and initiatives with both development and services components. Now, often these vary in size, scope, priority, and impact all throughout the organization. And at that same time that more and more varied projects are going on, organizations are needing to be more focused and look at things more holistically and be more proactive of managing what the organization is working on and how well they're doing it. Organizations have to balance a limited workforce against many variable projects and initiatives. Most of these with changing priorities along constraints of time, scope, budget, quality, resources, etc. Some projects being time sensitive, so missing a milestone can invalidate a lot of the work. Others have high security or quality requirements. And at the same time, project managers are having to estimate their schedules, costs, resources, and deliverables on a variety of projects based on incomplete information, which often leads to unrealistic or inaccurate project plans and lots of time misalignment of priorities. As many of these projects and initiatives are very key to the organization's overall goals and strategies and ultimately critical to the competitive position, project and delivery managers are being held accountable for their project schedules, their costs, and their resources availability like they never have before. The need for more accurate and up-to-date progress and status becomes larger as this information becomes more critical in determining the organization's direction and priorities. A large part of the answer is an integration of all of these critical business processes from end to end so that all of your project managers, both on development and services side, stakeholders, executives, all of those have the right information to make the right decisions. Automation and data coordination are important tools in creating an effective, integrated, and aligned solution. Professional service-focused organizations and product development organizations typically see the world a little bit differently. For example, development organizations focus on successful project delivery and being able to move on to the next project once that's done. Service organizations focus on the expected revenue and being able to deliver in order to recognize that revenue. Development will look at the resource capacity in order to answer the question, do I have the available people to complete this project, and should we take this project on? Whereas a services group will say, let's go ahead and book it, I'll find the resources, and how can I maximize my revenue on these engagements? These days, we're all increasingly being asked to do a greater amount of work with fewer people in a shorter amount of time. Often our company initiatives and focus can change faster than the projects that are supporting them can be completed. And therefore, companies have not only to make greater efforts to complete projects on time, within budget, and as scope, but also constantly reevaluate the focus and ensure that they're working on projects that are most productive, most profitable, and most in line with the overall strategy and mission. This work, of course, requires team members with constantly evolving skills who are often geographically dispersed. And the challenges that come out of this, we're seeing these across the board in information systems, research and development departments, professional services, as well as software providers, systems integrators, you name it. It's really across the board. And the challenges that they all share are numerous, like how to attract and retain qualified team members, how to get the right team members aligned with the work that they're best qualified and available to do, how to effectively use subcontractors and outsource work, how to measure status, performance, and health across multiple projects, products, and clients, how to generate accurate and timely bills for the work that's being done, how to be as efficient and productive as possible and contribute to the overall performance of the business. As we're seeing in today's climate, change is the only constant, and there's always more work that the organization can do. Given these challenges, how does an organization select the right projects to focus on? How are they going to be organized and managed? How does an organization estimate and prioritize the work that's going to be done? What about the workloads and availability of these highly demanded team members? How is that going to be managed? How can we use data from other areas, such as financial data, project data from other systems, resource data, and put that to the most effective use? Most importantly, how do we do all of this with shared distributed resources that include both services and development? Product-centric organizations, those organizations that make or develop tangible products, usually have good processes established for deciding which projects to fund, planning, and resourcing those projects, and then, of course, executing, monitoring, and controlling those. Service-centric organizations have traditionally worked a little bit differently. Service organizations, of course, provide highly skilled subject matter expertise to define, develop, and solve difficult and challenging business issues for their customers. Now, in my experience, while professional services teams are excellent in helping their customers transform and produce the desired results, they often don't, or in some cases refuse, to see the problems with or the gaps in their own internal processes. It can often take a very serious, painful, or problematic event in order for a services organization to reevaluate their project execution process. And of course, today there's a climate of increased competition and declining business volume. And unfortunately, too often services firms get wise to all of this a little bit too late. So let's talk about some ways to tie these two sides of the same coin, accommodate each of their different views of the world, and increase a successful project execution. One key is to implement real-time visibility of global resource utilization and forecasting. Now, resource management and allocation mean slightly different things for development and services. A product development view will look at future resources, make sure that they're evenly allocated, and focus on completing that project on time and within budget and as scope. However, services take a slightly different view. For services, it's all about the revenue. So look at their consultants working on projects, often not knowing exactly what's going to be, who the person's going to be working on that until right before the work begins. They want to make sure that everyone is as billable as possible and work on delivering the project as profitably as possible to the customer satisfactions. Services groups are also going to have to deal with delays that are often caused by the client or other outside influences that they're not able to control. So being able to reallocate work to keep their team billable and all the work moving forward is vital. It's possible to have centralized visibility while still accommodating the needs of each group. The right resource management process and ultimately solution enables everyone to be able to calculate the cost of underutilized or on-the-bench staff. Understanding what this non-productive time costs is very important, and real-time access to resource allocation data allows us to assign work to the available staff, resulting in a far greater return on our labor cost. By knowing the associated cost of this non-productive time, we're also able to calculate the avoidance of this idle cost and factor in the increase in productivity. And we can see that increase both in services and development. Now, although that time on the bench, that time where people are not fully allocated, is never going to reach zero, it's clear to see that by having visibility into your team's availability across all of their different work and projects and being able to assign work to people who are available, more work can be accomplished faster and you have a far greater return on your labor cost. Now, of course, with billable consultants, it's easy to dollarize this effect on the organization. For example, by having a central pool of resources and visibility and insight into their availability, giving you the ability to allocate the right person to the right job and minimize their time on the bench or their non-productive time. By doing that, let's say you could conservatively add 3 additional billable hours per month for each consultant. And for argument's sake, let's say the average bill rate was $85 an hour. That's pretty low, but let's just use that as an example. So if we took 50 consultants out of that, well, that would result in roughly an additional $150,000 per year in additional billable revenue. And that would be just by adding an additional 3 billable hours per month per person. It's not out of the ordinary to expect more hours of productivity just by having that one pane of glass view into all of your resources. Now, of course, this goes beyond just direct increase in billable revenue. Increases in productivity is another area where you'd see a substantial return on investment with resource management, especially out on the development side. You need to have complete visibility and insight into that availability, which means you not only need to be able to see what projects a person is working on, but also factor in their organizational initiatives, their non-project work, overhead, vacation, leave, time off, all of that, so that when you're scheduling a task, you need to be able to quickly find the person or people you're looking for, understand if they're available, and easily assign them to that work. Now, this not only allows you to assign people to right tasks, manage allocation, reallocate when needed, and minimize that non-productive time, but it also allows you to have insight into that capacity. That big project that you've got coming up, or that customer you're bringing on, you have the available resources to take that work on, or where are those resources going to be available? What sort of expectations can you set with your customers? By effectively managing your resources and gaining that valuable insight into their availability, you'll be able to know and answer that question. Transparency, visibility, and collaboration on projects helps to keep everyone informed about what's going on so project managers can address issues before they can derail the project completely. I've seen a lot of experts out there recommend implementing a simple and easy-to-use system to interface between your time tracking, your resource management, and your project scheduling. This allows an organization to retain a lot of the processes that are currently in use while still benefiting from the increased visibility to that crucial data. So rather than having kind of a one-stop shop with everything, have some integrations between some of your different systems and your processes. You've seen a lot of those big all-encompassing solutions like portfolio management solutions, and a lot of times those take quite a bit of time to implement, and a lot of times that can be way too long for the project you're working on today. Now, all that being said, software alone will not solve all of your problems. But the right system can provide a one pane of glass view for all of your processes throughout the organization. Here's a few important requirements to keep in mind. You want to have complete visibility of resource allocation, including your project work, your non-project work, vacation time. You want to have real-time status information across all of your projects, and have some warning indicators and alerts when necessary. So you're able to see if work is on time, or if work is stalled or slipped, or if there's some changes to the estimates or what have you. You want to have an integration between your work requests or work that's coming into the pipeline, your schedules, your resource management, your project roadmap, and prioritization. You need to be able to extract and analyze data of actually what's happening there. So the easiest way to do this is to have some sort of reporting mechanism where each person can organize their data in the way that they want and produce the analytics that they need in order to make the effective, informed decisions that they need to make, whether that be from a services perspective or product development perspective. You need to be able to see project status, what people are working on, your costs. Have that one pane of glass view in your projects and resources. Have some sort of dashboard or some other visual status indicators where you can quickly and easily see what you need to be concerned about. Now, as we just mentioned, some people believe that in order to improve an organization, you have to do kind of a rip and replace, where all the processes and tools that are currently in use, take those out and start over fresh. Now, this is not necessarily the case. and can sometimes actually be a pretty big mistake, as I've seen. You probably have a lot of processes in place that are working pretty well, and you should leverage these in order to get you to the next level. Remember, you're trying to improve upon your current situation and blend these two areas together. You've got to acknowledge what's successfully brought both development and services to where they are now, and then find that synergistic win-win relationship. You don't necessarily have to, or really even want to blow everything up and start over. There are probably some things you can leverage to get you to that next level that you're seeking. For example, you might find that people throughout the organization feel comfortable using Microsoft Project to schedule their work, and maybe others, just a simple Excel spreadsheet is what they're scheduling. Well, forcing everyone to stop using these tools and start using a different system could have very adverse effect. An alternative would be to look how you can enhance and extend the tools that you have and allow the people to keep the processes that they're comfortable with while still maximizing the benefits and value and still give you that centralized visibility to manage all of that in one place. And communication also helps if you have employees who can be resistant to change. They might be suspicious of your efforts to improve process when they feel that the status quo is already good enough. Good is the enemy of great, as Jim Collins wrote in his book, Good to Great, one of my favorite quotes. So when bringing together product development and professional services, you've got to instill trust in the entire team because their buy-in is crucial to achieving goals. Some things to keep in mind when you're establishing these new processes and systems for blending the dynamic methodologies of services and traditional project management of product development for enhancing that customer experience. One, it's got to be accessible. Everyone needs to be able to access, share, and retrieve information, view status and metrics on projects, as well as view and monitor progress and cost. Every organization is different, so flexibility is very key. Bringing together separate parts of the organization, such as development and services, creates an entirely new entity. Always keep that in mind. Consider taking a meet-us-where-they-are approach when establishing and adopting processes and systems. Interoperability. This is at the heart of what we're talking about here. Managing and entering that same data or related data in different places is very wasteful and can often be risky. Integrating your existing systems and your newly established processes with all of your systems, your PMIS, your resource management, reporting, financial, time tracking, all of that together with your people so that you experience lasting and transformative results. And, of course, scalability. Organizations today have to be very lean, agile, nimble, and dynamic. The way that you do things today and what's successful today may not be the case tomorrow. You've got to be able to adopt your processes and systems, and they should facilitate this, your adoption and your flexibility, not hinder this. Unfortunately, there's no silver bullet for change. A strategy that worked for one company may not necessarily be a good fit for another, which is why when you're doing this, it's very important that you use research and communication to uncover your organization's true needs and the best way to go about addressing them. Only you will know what will and will not be adopted by the organization, how much time and money they're willing to invest, and subsequently, what the best strategy is. Also, again, don't rely solely on software to fix the problem. It's imperative to integrate your processes and people and to manage them as well. Your software solution will need to empower your team members and facilitate their work. Now, contrary to popular belief, you can take small steps towards blending dynamic professional services and traditional development and even increasing your organizational maturity. A complete overhaul of your current process is not always necessary and can sometimes even be quite damaging to the organization. Rather, you should do your best to evaluate what works and what doesn't and implement a system that will give all project stakeholders that transparency, visibility, and communication. These small changes will not be too shocking to the employees and culture, but yet will provide a way for you to learn from mistakes and failures as opposed to repeating them. So with that, we'd like to get into some of your questions And it will take us just a second to get those all organized. And while we're doing that, I would like to mention very briefly that the solution that I was using as an example to illustrate some of the points that I was making is a solution called Journyx Project Execute. And if you would like more information on that solution to help manage some of these critical components of blending these two areas together, we'll put up some contact information and tell you how you could find out more. With that, I'd like to turn it back over to James and dive into some of your questions.
Thank you, Brian. I'll now be opening up the Q&A portion of our presentation. If you have not done so already, please go ahead and submit your questions via WebEx using the Q&A option there, and we'll see if we can get to as many as we can in the next couple of minutes. Let's dive right on in, Brian. First question comes in from Bob. He says, our dev team is required to track time, but the services team offers fixed price offerings and thus doesn't track time. Do you have any suggestions on how to get these two groups on the same page with tracking time per task?
That's a great question. I highly recommend if you're not tracking your actual time against your project, whether you're in product development or whether you're doing fixed price offerings, I highly recommend doing it, even if you start out at a very high level or macro level. And the reason for that is, one, it enables you to better understand where you are and better able to kind of manage your whole execution of the project while you're in the execution phase, if you will. You can't manage what you don't measure. As a recommendation for somebody who's not tracking time, what I would highly recommend is a couple of things. One, put a process in place to be able to do that that's very approachable and adoptable. As people who are not used to doing that, it is going to represent some sense of change. So be mindful of that. Give them a very simple way that they can easily go in and charge their time to that particular project. Maybe you start out charging time just at the customer level and then understanding that from there. And then as the adoption kind of grows, maybe you break it down and go down into a more detailed task level. But even in a fixed price engagement, it's going to help you understand your actual cost versus what you had bid out on that particular project, so you'll understand if you bid it correctly, or you could understand if there's additional work to be done, if you're going to go over, and how you deal with that, so that you're not having to wait once all of your fixed price money is gone and you still got work to do. How do you deal with that? You can be a little bit more proactive in that. So have a very easy and adoptable process. It may not be the same sort of way that your development team is tracking their time down to the task level, but if you can try to get it all in the same system, even if services is using a more simplistic view of that, because again, that's going to provide you that centralized visibility. And the key thing, especially with dealing with services or any group that's not tracking time, is again, provide that transparency and visibility. Explain to them what you're going to be using this information for, that it's not a policing tool, it's not a big brother type of thing. Those are some of the arguments that you often hear when you're implementing a new process like this. And explain to them that it's going to help us to increase our customer satisfaction, increase our delivery, and help you, the consultant, do your work even better.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, that should help out, Bob. Our next question comes in from Randy. Randy says, we use a mix of Microsoft Project and Excel, but we still struggle with resource management and resource allocation. How do you suggest having visibility and allocating resources between tools like these?
That's a great question, Randy, and it's not an uncommon situation. A lot of times, especially when you've got a mix of tools, like you said, you're using Microsoft Project and Excel, and you can't see resource allocation across those different applications, or even when people are using just straight Microsoft Project, but maybe they're using just the desktop project and not have that connected to, say, a shared resource pool or something of that nature. It's really hard to see a true visibility of resource allocation because you're not accounting for things that may exist outside of Microsoft Project or exist outside of Excel or even across multiple projects. Of course, you've probably seen a lot of systems that do that, but again, that requires some change to stop using Excel, stop using Project, or use some sort of hybrid approach to get in there and have your resource allocation. One suggestion, and I kind of made this point in the webinar, is to have a way that you can take the data from all of your project data and even your Excel, let your people continue to schedule using those tools, but still bring that data into one central place so you can see that resource availability. As an example, Journyx Project Execute is very good at doing this. It does synchronize both with Microsoft Project and allow you to schedule work directly within that tool, or even import that via Excel, and that'll give you some centralized visibility to your resource allocation and be able to manage your resources better across all of those different projects from all of those different systems. Some sort of integrated solution like that where you can tie that together without having to, again, do a rip and replace with what people are already doing helps go a long way in providing that centralized visibility without creating a big culture change.
Thanks, Brian. Also should be helpful to Randy. Well, as I promised, I wanted to have you back working productively within 30 minutes to honor your time. And I do appreciate you guys spending time on the phone with us today. We've come to the end of our time, but there are some more questions still coming through. So if your question hasn't been answered, we'll leave the WebEx open for a few extra minutes. Please continue to send your questions, and we will respond to you privately by email. We want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to spend with us today, and remind you that if you'd like to have some additional questions or would like to see maybe a more in-depth view of the solution that Brian presented called Project Execute, you can visit our website, which is shown on the screen there, and you can register for our live 30-minute weekly demo that Brian does on Project Execute. And I want to remind you, don't just plan, execute. Hope you all have a wonderful day today.
Thank you very much.